This week, Marlene, you've published your blog number 6. I've got a copy of the blog here. There is no reference in this latest blog article to the Finance Centre. I don't know whether that means that you've conceded the errors, the many errors that you've highlighted in some of your previous blog articles relative to the Finance Centre, which, as you know, has been the subject of commentary by me in both in some of the things that I've written and certainly in a YouTube video that I published the week before last. Given that you've obviously made no reference to the Finance Centre, I don't propose to delve into that debate anymore, save to say that should you publish further misguided criticism on the subject, then clearly I have a right to respond. I would, however, like to pick up on a number of matters regarding some of the stuff that you've published in your blog articles. This is now the latest blog article, is your 6th blog article. In one of your earlier blogs, Marlene, you've pointed out that I'm a member of the elite corporate lawyers. You mentioned the word elite specifically. I would like to say a little bit about myself, if I can, Marlene, because I certainly do not consider myself to be elite. I never have. But let me tell you a little bit about myself. Like all Gibraltarians of my generation, or at least the very, very large majority of Gibraltarians of my generation, I wasn't born with a silver spoon. I chose as a very young child to go and live with my parents, with my grandparents, for no reason other than that I wanted to study. And I really was very fortunate to have a grandfather who dedicated much of his life as a grandparent in sitting down with me after school to give me classes in English and mathematics, purely to catch up with my peers. I was fortunate enough, Marlene, that in 1988, when the GSLP party was elected into government, that they abolished the then pointage system. If you remember, Marlene, before the GSLP was elected into government in 1988, the previous government had a pointage system for anybody wanting, or any student wanting to go to university in the UK. I was a beneficiary of the abolition of the pointage system, along with very many thousands of our Gibraltarians ever since. If we are going to use the word elitist, then I think I am right in pointing out that the pointage system itself was an elitist educational system, to the extent that unless you had a certain number of points, you were excluded from the opportunity of being able to study in the UK. So I was a beneficiary of that. I took full advantage of that opportunity, Marlene. I went to study law in the United Kingdom. I graduated with a first class honours degree in law, and I then went on to do a master's, and I graduated with a master's in law with distinction. And I won all the prizes that were available to be won by students, and I graduated first in my year throughout my degree and also my master's degree. So I took full advantage of that educational opportunity that was given to me. Fortunately, as a result of the political decision that was taken in 1988 to abolish the elitist educational pointage system that I've highlighted. I came back to Gibraltar, Marlene, and I practiced law, and I've been practicing law for almost 30 years in Gibraltar. I've also tried to give back to the community, if you like. I've published a number of books. One of the books that I've published has been cited with approval by the Federal Court of Montana in the United States of America. I have also been a visiting professor of a UK university, and I'm proud of that. I've spent I've dedicated part of my life to the advancement of education and knowledge, even though I never stopped practicing law full-time. Yes, I was awarded the rank of Queen's Counsel as an exceptional case, and I'm proud of that. If that makes me part of an elite, then so be it. I do wear that badge of distinction as a matter of honor. So that's a little bit about myself, Marlene. When I look at your blog, your various blog articles, the one thing that springs to mind when I read some of it is that it's difficult to gauge your political inclinations sometimes from reading one blog article to the next. It's not always easy to pin you politically as a result of what you say on one occasion as opposed to what you say on another. Whether that makes you a populist or not, I don't know, but certainly one of the criticisms that is often leveled at you is that you are populist, that you say things as and when you believe that they are popular, or as and when that you think that it could damage the government politically. There's a couple of things that you've said which I would like to highlight. In your blog 3, there is a paragraph here which I find quite interesting, and I'm going to quote from it. And it says, quote, you talk about the economic model. It's something that I've referred to previously in both my Viewpoint GBC appearance and in some of my writings. And you say here, quote, this has created a Soviet-style economy in which some 50% of the local workforce works for government, and an even greater number of locals live in government-subsidized housing, end quote. I mean, reading that, Marlene, I can be excused from saying that this sounds very right-wing. I mean, in other words, you're attacking the economic model and the government of Gibraltar that you say has created a Soviet-style economy with a public workforce that accounts for 50% of the total number of employees employed in Gibraltar. Well, let me say, and this is something that I drew attention to in my GBC Viewpoint appearance, that is not correct. 50% of the local workforce doesn't work for the government. I looked at the available employment statistics, and the number is nearer to 21%. But your criticism is clearly directed at the public sector. Clear criticism of the public sector. But of course, it's not just your reference to the public sector. You go on to say, as I've highlighted, that an even greater number of locals live in government-subsidized housing. So what's your criticism there, Marlene? I mean, are you suggesting that if you were elected into government, you would reduce the number of employees, decimate the number of people that worked in the public sector, and that correspondingly you would do something about the number of local people that live in government subsidized housing? I mean, that is what this sounds like you are suggesting. I don't know whether you intend it or not, but certainly when you write something, you assume that it's intended to be there for a specific purpose. So that's one thing that certainly caught my eye when I read this blog. You then, in a subsequent blog, Marlene, in blog number 5, you make a statement here that actually doesn't sound right-wing at all. If anything, it sounds very left-wing, probably verging on Marxist philosophy, I might add. And I'm going to quote from it. It's blog number 5, and after you make criticism of our economic model, the Gibraltar economic model, you say, quote, "Unfortunately, the boom and bust cycle is a key characteristic of capitalist economies. So it's always just a matter of time before a crisis catches you," end quote. Again, if you look at that, you are clearly directing criticism at, quote, capitalist economies. This is, if nothing else, it's a criticism of a system of economic progress which successive governments of Gibraltar has had in place for very many years, and indeed is shared with the capitalist economies the world over. So that very much sounds like a criticism that pins your political mast to the far left. Now, how you reconcile one statement with the other, I don't know. And that is something that perhaps viewers will have their own views on. The other thing, Marlene, that I wanted to talk about in this video, in this short video that I've decided to make, is the reference in your latest blog article, blog number 6, to personal criticism directed at Fabian Picardo. This one really, I found this one particularly difficult to read, Marlene, in the light of some of the personal criticism that you have directed at the Chief Minister himself. I mean, I've listened on a number of occasions to an interview that you gave to GBC, I believe it was last year, where you accused the Chief Minister of using abusive language in Parliament. Now, I don't know whether the language was abusive or it wasn't abusive, but certainly in the cut and thrust of politics, Marlene, you have to accept that things are said in a manner that are not intended to be personal. And that is common both to the Gibraltar political scenario as in any other political scene the world over. Had it been abusive, then I assume that's why you have a speaker in place. If the speaker had considered that the language was abusive and therefore by implication unparliamentarian, the speaker would have intervened. So I really don't know to what specific references you are referring to, but certainly the accusation has been made in a manner which I think directs personal criticism of the Chief Minister. And yet, when I read this blog, and it's not just this latest blog, it's some of your press releases and indeed some of the other blog articles that you've published, it does come across, Marlene, as you being personal. And some of the language that you use is also intemperate. And, certainly in this latest blog, for example, you make some personal criticism of the Chief Minister. I'm not going to quote from them. I don't think it's necessary to do it. But there is one sentence here that I thought was particularly, I think, unnecessary, to say the least. You talk about the Chief Minister's speech at the John Mackintosh Hall on the 18th of October 2019 when the GSLP won the election. And you specifically reference the fact that the Chief Minister was emotional in his victory speech. And I'm going to quote the words that you say for the avoidance of doubt. You say, quote, that the Chief Minister, he, quote, has cried yet again when remembering his family, close quote. Is that necessary, Marlene? Is it necessary for you to highlight the fact that the Chief Minister has cried, remembering his family, that the Chief Minister was emotional in delivering a victory speech? I think is something that honors him. I don't think it's something that deserves to be highlighted in context, which is clearly intended to level personal criticism at him. I mean, I have known Fabian Picardo for very many years, and if there's one thing that we share in common, it's the fact that the Chief Minister, as an individual, is an emotional person. The Chief Minister, like myself, we wear our heart in our sleeves. I believe that that is something that certainly honors him. And for you to highlight that, I think, is the height of hypocrisy if what you have suggested previously is that the Chief Minister's language is not language which is suitable to be used in the context of political debate. So I thought I should draw attention to that, Madeleine, because it is something that I think is important. And therefore, forgive me for making reference to that specifically. But I think, when you're in politics, you are open as much to criticism as you are to be able to criticize others. Now, the last thing I would like to say, Madeleine, is that I don't know whether you've drawn the debate on the finance centre to a close, whether you've realized that you've committed a fundamental error in the criticism that you've leveled against the finance centre. If you haven't, then at some stage, I'm sure that you and I will pick up the relevant threads that may remain outstanding in terms of the continued debate in that area. I've said as much as I wanted to say, and thank you very much to you and to viewers for listening to this very short video. Thank you.